Hi there, my name is Lindsay Berard and I am a psychologist candidate and mental performance consultant working here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I am very fortunate to be able to do my work with athletes at the national level, like with Golf Canada and On the Podium, as well as more locally here at the University of Manitoba with Bisons, other Manitoba organizations, and individual athletes. I'm here today to talk to you about supporting your athletes with their mental health or mental illness challenges. When it comes to mental health, if you've worked in sport for any length of time, you know that this can sometimes be a pretty taboo topic. There can be a whole bunch of reasons and concerns that athletes have to kind of share how they're doing with their coaches or individuals at the organization level. That's totally okay. But research suggests that athletes and high performers tend to have higher levels of mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, and eating disorders compared to the general population. So when we're talking about this topic, I want you to think of this as a when you're going to experience these challenges with athletes rather than an if you're going to experience them. And so when we think about opening up the idea of talking about our mental health and being able to check in with others, I want you to first reflect on what your understanding of mental health and mental illness is. This might be something that you have very little information on. This might be something that you're struggling with yourself. If you have the space and interest in learning about this, and I would highly suggest that you take some time out of the very limited time that you probably have in your coaching life to just familiarize yourself with a bit of information about what are some common signs and symptoms of mental health disorders that individuals might be struggling with. We've got here this mental health continuum, which rather than taking each disorder and looking at that specifically, we don't have time for that today, it kind of collects them in a couple different areas. And so we've set this up to really communicate where an athlete or human might be. We've clustered them into healthy, injured, and hurt. And if you look at these different symptoms, there's things like changes in eating, sleep, behaviors like wanting to connect with other people, if you feel down or sad, able to manage challenges as they come up or control your emotions like anger or frustration. Regardless of where you kind of are in this continuum, there might be things that people might be experiencing. So if you find kind of a cluster, someone might be injured. They might not check all of the boxes for some of those different signs and symptoms, but some of them might be there. So I think this is a nice guide to kind of start off with to consider, where might humans that I interact with be? And are they in a space that they might need a bit more support? Or should we start to really focus in how can we get them connected so that they're not suffering for an extended period of time? When we look at this continuum, I think it's important to note as well that on a day-to-day basis, people are going to experience a wide range of emotions and feelings, right? So this isn't to say, a change in sleep for one night and then I'm grumpy the next day. This is a pretty significant change or deviation from someone on their general normal well-being. So important to kind of consider that when we think about, what might be going on for people. And so when you are a coach, I think this can be really challenging to consider, how can you best support your athlete when you are suspecting that they might be injured or hurt? Depending on the relationship you have with them, that also might add another layer of challenge. And so a couple of ways that I think what might be helpful to kind of offer support or demonstrate, that you are a safe person for this athlete if they would like to access that. They're two simple things that you can do. One is to connect and one is to care. So if we think about connecting with your athletes, this is really getting to understand them as humans and really understanding how, if they do have a mental health disorder or if they don't, how you can best support them in a wide variety of ways that you tend to see come up in sport. So checking in with an athlete about things like, how do they like to be coached? How should they receive feedback, or what should that feedback experience look like? When do they perform their best? What can you do to support them? What should you do if they're struggling or if you're concerned? Having an opportunity to connect with your athlete, or maybe a parent or past coach if your athlete is on the younger side, just so that you have some information of how you can really tailor your approach to best support that human. If we see someone who might have a mental health disorder and might be really struggling with a certain aspect of sport, like for instance, receiving feedback, that might be something that you want to keep in mind for those times when that has to come up. So I'll just give you an example of just some minor little tweaks. So if a human has maybe some anxiety or tends to be more anxious, hold themselves really accountable and really gets hard on themselves really easily, feedback might be, not coming right after the performance, but maybe 10, 15 minutes later. We might want to do that in the corner where it's quiet, where they have some time to kind of take a deep breath, think. You might also want to get their feedback on the performance first before you offer yours, or ask them, what area would you like feedback on? So just a few minor tweaks to probably some of the things that you're already doing, or maybe things that you already do without knowing that that's giving you a helpful benefit to keeping those humans well. Those are all some things to kind of consider and be just intentional about. The other thing that I mentioned in terms of supporting your athletes is really to care and demonstrating that you care, because I know if you didn't care, you wouldn't be a coach, but really offering care and connecting with your athletes in a way that helps them know that you could be someone that could either support them in that moment or try to connect them to something that a service or resource that is outside of your scope as a coach. So coaches will often say to me, what am I supposed to do? I think this athlete's struggling. How do I say this? Give me a script. And I would say just in those moments, really being aware and mindful of what that athlete is sharing with you and what you can pick up. You can open a conversation by saying, I've noticed that you seem to be quieter in the team setting. Is everything okay? Highlighting behaviors or things offers like a less accusatory way to open a conversation. And then if you're open, not showing judgment, and really just kind of following along, keeping the conversation going, that can be really helpful to either open up the space for that athlete to share maybe some struggles or what they're experiencing. Then it might also just help them know that there is someone that I could talk to when I feel ready to do so. So I said I didn't have a script for you, but I did include in the resources here a couple of different versions and prompts that you could consider, both if you have an athlete that you're thinking is maybe struggling and someone that you might be really concerned about their well-being. So I appreciate you joining me today and hope that you have some opportunities to connect and care in your upcoming season. Take care.